Hello everyone, my name is Young Falcon and welcome to my review of the Streets of Rage 4 beat 'em up game. This is a game that's 20 years in the making. It's been a dormant franchise for quite some time on Sega's back catalog, and well, we gotta see if this new one by Dotemu and Lizard Cube is a return to form or just a shell of its former self. Well, thankfully, I'm here to clarify and confirm that this is indeed a really great beat 'em up, albeit a bit on the short side and could use a couple of extra features and content. However, despite the short runtime, it's still a wonderful game and I very much recommend you guys pick it up, especially for such a low price point, that being around $25. The storyline and stuff here is pretty standard Streets of Rage stuff. The crime syndicate has taken over the city once again, and it's up to Axel and friends to go in there, take them down, and overall save the city and save the day from evil gang corruption. And of course, you have all the standard gameplay that Streets of Rage has come to fare. You have your standard punch and kick buttons. You can jump and do a couple of kick maneuvers and hold up and charge for a strong attack move. You also have your special moves, which take a little bit of your health, which you can recover by beating up on opponents. And it usually lets you do a defensive option to get people off of you or an offensive option to continue a combo streak. Of course, you have your standard grabs and grapples, aerial grapples or grabs on the ground, and you can vault over and do a bunch of cool, crazy stuff that way. And the screen clearing nuclear move, which is the star move. These are those big bomb like moves that are super bombastic, takes up a whole bunch of screen space, and it wipes out enemies with ease, especially the grunt like enemies. It's also super flashy, it looks great, and all the star moves are just an absolute blast to use. The gameplay overall is your standard, well, beat 'em up affair. Nothing here has really varied too differently from any other game. Even the enemy types play it pretty darn safe. There's nothing too crazy here. You have your standard whip girl enemies, you have your guys with tasers and weapons like bats and spears and all that usual stuff. You have your guys that do invincible flying kicks and charge maneuvers at you. You get the gist, it's all your standard stuff. The boss fights here are also pretty darn good, and again, it's still pretty standard Streets of Rage affair. You got your commissioners who just are bulky versions of your other police officer members you fight. He's a pretty cool boss fight, but nothing too crazy going on here. The highlights are definitely towards the end of the game, and the duo boss fights you have to fight, like the two snake ladies that shoot poison and electricity at once at you. That was a really tough fight, had a lot of fun doing that. The level design and all of that stuff is pretty darn good. There's nothing too crazy, nothing out of the ordinary here, but it works out pretty well. My personal favorite being this pier level where you can knock enemies into these bottomless pits that the pier have, and you knock them straight into the water. It's a ton of fun to do, especially if you have a character with the right combo that can kind of launch them directly into the holes down below. That's always a blast to use, especially when I played as Cherry. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do to easily mop out entire waves of enemies in a matter of seconds if you're pretty fast and know what you're doing. Alright, it feels very satisfying, and it's super kinetic. That's also thanks to the beautiful hand-drawn animation. All of these individual cells or sprites, if you will, look absolutely incredible. The hand-drawn watercolor-esque visuals along with that anime aesthetic look very, very good. The scenery is absolutely breathtaking, the character models are out of this world, and everything about the game just looks great. I also love all the retro references they try to pack in too, allowing characters from Streets of Rage 1 and 2 in their pixel art forms and to enter the game, which is actually really, really cool. Upon leveling up enough, you could unlock characters like Skate from Streets of Rage 2 and Axel from Streets of Rage 1, so there's a lot of cool stuff there and a lot of great fan service that really makes you want to keep going back and replaying these levels. And replaying you will too, so you can fully unlock everything and go for those S ranks and stuff now that the Streets of Rage has a ranking system too. Try not to rely on your star moves and things like that, and get through the levels with as much health as possible, possibly without taking damage if you can, is of the utmost importance, so you can get those beautiful S ranks and make yourself a lot of points so you can further unlock more characters and artwork and things of that nature. It's a really fun, fast-paced, and kinetic beat 'em up, and it feels like a great tribute to the 90s games of old. And honestly, it is a wonderful continuation of the Streets of Rage series. This was something we have been looking forward to for 20 plus years, and I really feel like it lives up to the beautiful blend of Streets of Rage 2 and Streets of Rage 3. It has a lot of fast kinetic characters like Cherry, and it also has a bit more of a callback to the slower paced characters like Axel and Blaze and this sort. So it is really, really cool to let you experiment in that regard. I also very much enjoyed some of the heavier characters like Floyd and Adam, who have a nice blend of being those kind of big body with huge kind of screen clearing grapple attacks and stuff too. Each character has their own function, and you can really find your groove with everyone here. I think personally my least favorite was just Axel because he was a little bit on the basic side, or but there wasn't the worst or anything. It wasn't that big of a deal. It's just a personal preference. You know, there's so many fun characters here, and getting together with a bunch of friends and hopefully getting some 4-player on is really great times. The only gripes I really have with the game is the multiplayer aspect, at least online. It just doesn't really work from what I was playing. It's not that it's absolutely awful, it just feels like a lot of it didn't really work for me. When I was playing online, I encountered a lot of various input delay, an extreme amount of lag throughout the gameplay session, people just opted up and quitting during sessions that you started and saying that they're with a client or something, so you have to completely restart levels and stuff. It gets pretty frustrating, and that kind of ties into my other point where this game could have really benefited from some form of a checkpoint system. Some levels do feel a little bit on the lengthy side, despite the game being a relatively short affair, clocking in around about 2 to 3 hours for me, you know, a pretty short game. But all in all, it would have really benefited from a checkpoint system or two, so you could kind of take breaks in between levels and not have to redo the entire thing over and over again. I know that's kind of an arcade way of looking at it. I completely understand that they were going for that feel, but it still would have been nice to at least have that feature, kind of giving you a break in between the action, or not having to restart an entire level because you lost on a certain boss fight or anything like that. You guys get the gist. Yeah, it's standard, you know, modern game conventions. I see they were trying to get away from that a little bit, but it would have been nice to have the feature, especially because people do tend to de-seek and stuff like that out of online multiplayer a lot too. So it is extremely frustrating when you're playing a game and you know, want some random people to join in, you want to go for a beat 'em up good old time, and then out of nowhere they de-seek or one person quits and it says they were the client because it's, you know, peer-to-peer or whatever, and then boom, you lose a lot of progress in that way. So that is a little bit on the frustrating side. Overall, I don't really recommend playing the online multiplayer at all. Just get yourself some friends locally and you should have a good time. The music is actually super good. On that note, on that leaving the negative note, the music is extremely good. There's a bunch of great callbacks to the original and all of it sounds great. I love the synth step beats, I love that kind of chiptune-esque feel it's got going on, and of course it has some great more orchestrated pieces, right? More songs that feel a little bit more authentic. And hey, if the new soundtrack isn't your thing, it's okay, because they also have a classic Streets of Rage soundtrack, so you can really get that vibe of the old school games fresh in your mind, especially if you're running pixel art styles and things like that. Overall, this game is actually one of my favorite beat 'em ups I've played in quite some time. It's definitely up there with River City Girls, although I think I prefer River City Girls just a tad bit more in terms of gameplay. Just there's a little bit more to do. It feels a lot more open and stuff, but overall they are both very good games, going for a little bit of different experiences and things of that nature, and I actually very much enjoyed my time with Streets of Rage 4. I highly recommend you guys pick it up, especially if you have Xbox Game Pass. You can download it right now for free or whatever you're paying for Xbox Game Pass. It's very much worth it. And if you guys don't have that service, well, it's on consoles for around $22.49 right now because it's on a 10% sale, and eventually it will go back up to its $25 price tag, and it's most definitely worth the price of admission for a great beat 'em up time that you could 100% in a weekend essentially, and you know, that's all you could really ask for. With that all being said, I'm Young Falcon signing out. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of Streets of Rage 4. Have a wonderful day, guys, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.